Just Baseball show for Friday, December 20th. And at long last, Mr. Buehler makes his return. Walker Buehler, the man that got the final out of the World Series in 2024 and who is currently a free agent. We're going to talk about that. He rejoins the program. We're going to talk about the run to the World Series, what he did after the World Series, maybe who he got on FaceTime and all of that. We will also play general manager for the A's and the Twins.
Don't say it
One
like that. Banger time. We just did the Marlins and the Brewers. Arm and I did an hour and 15. Probably the greatest episode we've ever done, and this is going to surpass that.
Next week is Mets and Yankees. That's going to be more fun, I think.
Eh,
Yeah, maybe.
I don't want to
They've
talk
already
about my
done a lot.
Yankees. No, I do kind of want to talk about Cody Bellinger, though.
Yeah, we will talk about Cody Bellinger off the top. As always, we're presented by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. Again, if you like the program, be sure to like and follow. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube, all that stuff. Leave a comment if you hate us or if you love us.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully you
Or
love
if
us.
or if we're fine. It's like, you know what, these guys are okay. This is a C plus B minus podcast. Just say that in the comments.
Another thing for our listeners, any gamblers out there, BetMGM is doing 7 days of parlays from December 3rd or December 17th through the 23rd up to Christmas. So if you're interested in betting on other sports and you haven't downloaded BetMGM yet, remember to use code JustBaseball to get all those bonus bets back. If you lose your first wager, 7 days of parlays, odds boost, no sweats. It's a good time over there at BetMGM. I highly recommend downloading it. But remember, use code JustBaseball.
And a money line in a pear tree. Is that how that works?
Exactly. You sounded good.
7 days of parlays. I love that. It rhymes. Rhyme scheme. It's all about the rhyme scheme. Let's talk about Mr. Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger is the newest member of the New York Yankees. He was acquired along with some cashola for Cody Petit, the right-handed pitcher who can be a swingman of sorts for the Chicago Cubs. From MVP to salary dump. What a weird few years it's been for Cody Bellinger because it's not like it was a steady decline. It was a drastic decline and then a spike back up to the point where he made money, like he made enough to the point where he was essentially unemployable by the Cubs based on what they want to do. And now he's a New York Yankee. So the value was as high as you've ever seen it. I think he set an ARB1 record. And then as low as you pretty much ever seen it and then really high again. And now you got to pay down belly to get Cody Petit.
Yeah, he'd be a fun interview here on the Just Baseball show to go over his bizarre career because he was at a high of highs. To your point, 2019 MVP winner, 305 he hit, OPS over 1,047 jacks while playing great defense at multiple different positions. And we're thinking to ourselves, all right, this is a top five player for the next decade. 2020, it's COVID, it's a weird year, down year. Then 2021, he plays 95 games. It's the worst season ever. He has a 542 OPS. Then he's bad again in 22. Then he goes to the Cubs, has a great year. And we're thinking, is he back? Underlying metrics said a different story, though we were a little bit worried. And then that reared its head, 751 OPS last year. So I was flying home. Right now, I'm back in New York City, as you can see, a different background, but I'm flying from Santa Barbara to Denver, and I land and I go on Twitter. And about an hour into my flight, so I arrived about an hour after, Cody Bellinger had been traded to the Yankees. And he was a player that I heard the Yankees were heavily involved with kind of the whole offseason, but those talks really ramped up a week before this, and they were a perfect trade partner. The Yankees needs a first baseman. They also need an outfielder, so why not get both in one player in Cody Bellinger? It made sense. And all I'm hearing is he's going to the Yankees, and I'm scared, Jack, because I don't love the Cody Bellinger move if we had to give up good prospects in order to get him.
Yeah.
That's where my mind was at. Would I take Cody Bellinger even at his current salary? Yes, but it would have to be a salary dump for me to like it. And what do we see? It was a salary dump. So it's going to be impossible to replace Juan Soto, clearly, but that's not what they're trying to do here. The Yankees, over the past two seasons, have had the worst production among any team in Major League Baseball at first base. So he's an instant upgrade there, but he can obviously play center, moving Judge over to right field. I think his defensive acumen, when I hear a lot of people talk about this move, is a little bit overblown. In 2019 and 2020, yes, he was a good defender in the outfield. Over the past couple of seasons, he's been average to below, right? We didn't just get a Trent Grisham type who could potentially hit some home runs.
Yeah.
We got a guy who could play good first base defense and can play average defense in center field. But I am excited for a potential uptick in power, right? We saw the downturn last year, only 18 home runs.
Yeah.
But if he played every game at Yankee Stadium, he would have hit 24. That's the most of any stadium outside of Great American Ballpark. So there are some narratives that I'm buying into. Also, dad was a Yankee, and I don't know if you heard that quote from Scott Boras when he was talking to Brian Cashman.
He's been like begging to be a Yankee for a while, it seems.
That makes me happy. I
Yeah, it
mean,
has to.
that makes me feel good about this because Cody Bellinger is 1 year removed from an 881 OPS. Do I expect that? No. Nobody should expect that. But can we improve on a 751? Can we hit
Yes.
20 to 25 home runs? Right? Because if we get a 780 OPS guy who plays decent defense, versatility, I would pay for that on the open market. And that's basically what the Yankees did. Because Cody Petit, respect to Cody Petit, but I think there was a reason the Yankees got rid of him. Have you seen the
Wait,
underlying metrics of Cody
but
Petit lately?
I don't even think it's an indictment on Cody Petit. There was just no spot for him. Like
Yeah,
you already needed to figure out a way to essentially phase out Stroman or Clark Schmidt, and you traded Nestor Cortez. We're at the point where one of them is going to be left on the chopping block. And Petit, like, what does he do for you if you still have Will Warren? I saw the initial dialogue, the rumors were Bellinger for Will Warren straight up. And I was like, okay, if I were the Yankees, I would still do that. Like
no,
Warren
I
was
wouldn't do
not
that
Warren was
because the
not
only
good in
reason
AAA. Did
I
you
agree,
watch any Scranton? Did you watch any Rail Riders? He was really bad last year.
his numbers are atrocious,
They're horrible.
horrible.
So my thing is like, okay, that's the
But
prospect, the one for one. I would do it if I were the Yankees. The fact is, Warren still has prospect pedigree and his clock hasn't started.
exactly, that's
Petit,
why
like,
I didn't want to give up any of that for Bellinger.
I get it.
If he could be used in a different deal, like I agree with you in terms of a fair deal, sure. But I don't want a fair deal. I wanted a deal in which I thought that the Yankees did a very good job. And trading Will Warren would be a fair deal. Trading Cody Petit, I feel that the Yankees did a very good job here. And, I tweeted out, did we get the Cody Bellinger for free? Cubs fans didn't like that. Of course, it wasn't for free, but I'm sure Cubs fans thought that they were going to get more than a reliever and have to even send a little bit of cash over to the Yankees for Cody
Yeah.
Bellinger. No Cubs fan can tell me that they didn't want more or even expect more. I won't believe that.
Yeah, so what I will say is this trade, I feel like, essentially showed the Cubs' hand that they really wanted Cody Bellinger off the
Yes.
roster.
Yes, they did.
And that's not, again, that's not an indictment on Cody Bellinger. Like that's not bad on Cody the person or even Cody the player. It's just Cody the player at that money was not worth it for the Cubs when you have PCA in center and you have Michael Busch at first base.
Yeah. Just didn't make
Okay, we're good. Like Bellinger, where was he going to play?
and
Was
yeah,
Bush going to play a bad third? Like you would need to essentially fuck up the puzzle entirely to fit that expensive piece in the puzzle, and it
100%.
just wasn't worth it.
Because what, are you going to move him over to right? You have Seiya Suzuki and Owen Casey.
Well, Kyle Tucker isn't right now.
That's a good point.
You have Gold Glover Ian Happen left. You have PCA who will be a Gold Glover in center. You have Kyle Tucker in right. What are you doing? You clogging the DH spot with a guy that can still hold his own at first base? What about Michael Busch? It's
Yeah.
not like Busch is an above average DH. Like his value comes from playing a decent first base and hitting. Again, it was just a hard player to shoehorn into their plans at that price point, and they really wanted him off the roster, and they got him off the roster.
So, as a Yankee fan, you heard my reaction. I was
Yeah.
excited for it because we didn't have to give up anything. We even got a little bit of cash taken on the deal. And if I were the Yankees and Cody Bellinger was a free agent right now, I would sign him on that multi-year deal for around that much money. I think I would. Right? It's not my money anyway. The Yankees have a ton of money to spend, and he
Yeah.
adds some versatility. And I like the upside of the bat, right? From where we are now. I like the downside of the bat last year from an 881 OPS, but now we have a chance to build back on it in a stadium that fits his needs. So I'm curious, as an outsider, you initially see the trade happen. What's your reaction?
I think it makes a lot of sense for both parties. And I laid out the Cubs side of the story. I
Yeah.
laid out the Cubs' perspective, like, hey, they got out of that money, and now the puzzle makes more sense. On the Yankee side, I think it's very clear that you got an upgrade, and you can plug him in center field if you want to do that. And you could run out Dominguez in left, Cody in center, and Judge in right. Or you could play him at first base if you feel like Ben Rice is not the guy. Or if you feel like there is an external option out there that could make you better still at first base or in center field, Cody can just take the other.
Yeah.
I think that is the flexibility of Cody Bellinger. Like, that's where defensive versatility comes to play. If they want to make a trade for a good center fielder, Bellinger's your everyday first baseman. If they want to sign Christian Walker or Pete Alonso, then Bellinger's your everyday center fielder. Like, there's options here, and you're the Yankees. You didn't sign Soto to that 765, so now, like, show off your financial muscles. You can do this, and you can do this with quantity. And it's not like you're married to Cody for 6 years. You're married to him for one, essentially.
Yeah.
Two, you're fine.
I think the Yankees are out on Christian Walker and Pete Alonso now. That's kind of my feeling.
Why? Because of
I think
financials?
no, I well, partly that, and I think that the draft pick attached to a Christian Walker might keep the Yankees out of it.
You're the
Whether
Yankees.
I
I
agree
like.
with
I
you.
don't care about the draft pick. Go get Pete Alonso from the other borough.
You're not hearing my opinion on it. I totally agree with you.
Okay,
Fuck that.
good.
Are you kidding me? A fucking draft pick? That's just what I'm hearing. That's just what I'm hearing. So I'm relaying that to the people. My opinion is fuck all that. Go get
You're
Christian
right.
Walker, of course.
Right.
And then we're gonna put Cody Bellinger in center. What are you talking about? But I do think that's hanging on them for whatever reason. But the Yankees still need to make more moves, right? Jazz Chisholm was the third baseman. Who's the second baseman? Are we moving Jazz over to second in order to, and then go get a third baseman? Maybe is it even Bregman? I don't know. Maybe they are the ones to trade for Alec Boehm if Dave Dombrowski gets his head out of his ass
Yeah.
potentially. But my last question to you on this: were you surprised that it was just a straight salary dump?
No,
No.
because the money's gotten crazy, and I've been really pissed off on this pod for the last like week and a half, 2 weeks. And I'm sorry, guys. I
Why?
apologize for that.
I
I've
didn't
just
get
been
that.
pissed because baseball's broken. Baseball is
Mm,
broken financially.
mm.
Juan Soto, I don't want to say, oh, Juan Soto just ruined baseball with his contract, but Steve Cohen and Juan Soto just set unrealistic expectations for a lot of guys that are going to hit the open market.
You know what I've
It's
been
like,
thinking about
what?
with the Soto thing? And this is more galaxy brain. I have no idea if this is actually anything. I just straight conjecture my thoughts when my head hits the pillow. Do you think Steve Cohen said to Juan Soto, "You know that $75 million signing bonus we gave you? Give it back to me and I'm going to turn it into 200 million in a few years for you because I'm Steve Cohen and they wrote billions about me." Do you think that there is an element of Steve Cohen helping these players with even these huge deals and saying, "I can actually turn your money into more money using my hedge fund"? That's what's been sitting with me.
That's
That even
such
the
a
numbers that
tinfoil
he's
hat
giving
thing.
them, even the numbers and the money that he's giving them isn't actually the full amount of what they will end up receiving with Steve
Dude,
Cohen's help.
take the tinfoil hat off for a minute.
I can't. That's all I think about now. That
Take the
they're actually
tinfoil hat
that
off.
that Soto's $805 million contract is actually going to be $1 billion contract.
That's an out of bounds theory, and I love that your mind goes there because it means that you haven't lost creativity, which
That
I'm totally here for, and I respect that. And you're ready to push creative boundaries at all times. But that feels, if not concretely illegal, it feels really illegal.
but I don't think it's illegal. I
It
don't think it's
feels kind of
illegal.
illegal.
I know, but the Braves Foundation. I mean, what are they doing over there in Atlanta?
Yeah, that's charity.
Is it?
Two couple of very different things. No, I feel like that's not allowed, but I also think that's just not something that crosses anybody's mind when they're talking about this. And I
Look at
think
me in the
Soto
eyes.
wants his money. I'm looking you in the
Look at
eyes
me in
right
the
now.
eyes. I want everybody
Yeah,
on YouTube look at me in the eyes. It sounds crazy, but don't you think that there's something sitting in the back of your mind where it's like, I think Peter might be cooking here?
should I tell people about the time you tried pitching me on a pyramid scheme, or should I just
I,
leave
d-
that out?
I think that I'm a thinker.
Yeah.
Does every thought come out smartly
Smartly.
like that
Uh,
one? No, but no one could debate. I'm a thinker.
I don't remember what we were talking about off the top of our head. Actually, I do, and I'm not going to share. But I said that seems like an awesome idea, but isn't that just a pyramid scheme?
And then I was
You're
like,
like,
no, you
oh,
don't understand. It's building up, and then everybody trickulates down, and I'm like,
oh yeah,
it was like the
yeah.
Michael Scott scene in The Office where he's like drawing it, and it's an exact pyramid, and then he turns over, and everyone's like, you know, and I'm like, wait, I didn't mean to pitch this then,
Um, but back to the original point.
you know.
I'm not going to dive into the Steve Cohen conspiracies. I'm just going to say I think they set these unrealistic expectations for everybody, and baseball money on an AAV basis is gotten to a point of no return.
Yeah.
And I'm just terrified because, like, Cody Bellinger's production could be worth it at this price point if baseball is truly broken. But the way that every baseball general manager wants to operate, that production at that price point is very hard to move, and they figured out a way to move it. And that is why the return was not as good as some Cubs fans hoped for, I think.
Great transition into us playing general manager.
Let's do it. But before that, you're going to hear from the man. Here's Walker Buehler. The man's valiant return. Walker Buehler from the Bourbon Cave, the Bourbon Den. You're hanging out there with a whole bunch of stuff behind you. The guy that got the final out of the World Series is with us now for the first time since getting that final out of the World Series. I would ask like an overarching "How are you?" question, but it's been, I'm sure, a crazy 2 months. So it was final out, like 10 days, then your charity golf outing. What's happened in your life since the charity golf outing?
Not much, man. We did, yeah, it was kind of a whirlwind couple weeks there to the charity event gets a little rowdy, so we had a good 2 week kind of run there and not a ton else, man. It's been cold here. We've done a little duck hunting, little deer hunting out at the farm, dealing with the free agency stuff and kind of all that goes along with that. But yeah, just hanging out. Kid's almost 11 months old now, so that's a whole wild ordeal as well.
Well, I know, you went through obviously your first season with Finley in your life, and that had to be so freaking cool. I know that's got to be a little weird this offseason now, not knowing, oh, am I, you know, gonna go sign a lease in LA? Am I gonna sign a lease elsewhere? So I'm sure you're kind of on pause right now. What makes this like 3 week stretch for you different than really any other year of your career?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the winter meetings were a lot different for me personally this year, right? You're normally just watching to see who's going where and to have
Right.
kind of any part of that, it was a little bit different and kind of on the phone and talking to people and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I think once you get through the new year, we're used to kind of planning and looking at leases and all that kind of stuff. And if you don't know where you're going, it's hard to do that.
Yeah. And are you enjoying this kind of this sense of the unknown? Will a lot of people trying to get your attention, being like, we'd like to have you pitch here. It's got to be a little bit exciting.
No, I mean, I think the idea of it is super exciting. I think in reality, it's pretty stressful and kind of there's good parts and bad parts to it. Obviously, I'm not like freaking out, but it's also just like you kind of want to know what you're doing and whatnot. But yeah, we had the kind of flurry of stuff once Soto went, and then as per usual, I think a lot of stuff will start happening after Christmas. So um, I wouldn't say it's a waiting game, but it's a waiting game.
We've been talking to you for 2 years at the year and a half, 2 years at this point, and you always talk about getting ready to pitch into November. You,
Yeah,
you pitched into November, and there is not a better way to go into the offseason than the way that you went into the
right.
offseason. And the videos were circulating of you not really having a voice when you sat down with Mookie and my guy from Indianapolis, Brent Honeywell, who made his way from Indy to
Right.
right next to you on base. Why'd you lose your voice? Were you screaming during the parade? What was going on?
No, I mean, there's a screaming element and the yelling, and then there's the alcohol intake, I think is probably part of that as well. So we won the game, got on the plane, got home to LA at like 7 a.m. that day, like that morning.
Yep.
So I didn't sleep a wink on the plane.
I saw you were the only guy that didn't sleep.
Yeah, I was the only one that went undefeated on the plane too.
Good. Good.
And then I made it till 8 p.m. that night before I went to sleep.
Did.
Then we woke up the next day. It was kind of a nothing. Then we had the parade the day after that. So it was kind of a pretty long stretch there. But we went straight from the parade to my house. Honey came to my house for like 2 hours. My family was there. We were hanging out. And then we went straight to Mookie. So, like, I mean, you guys saw I was still wearing the jersey and all that. So we were going pretty strong there for a while.
Love it. So I want to start back and go through this postseason run. I know you've talked about some of the stuff on other podcasts, but selfishly, I want to hear about before we get to the Padres series because on that interview that you guys did with Mookie Betts and of course the entire
Yeah.
team, you guys talked about that the Padres were the best team that you faced
Yeah.
comparatively to my New York Yankees, which kind of made me
My
feel bad. But
his
it's okay
Yankees.
because I understand. I understand the Padres were elite. So before going into that series, knowing that this might be the most talented team that you guys faced, did it feel like the World Series before the World Series? And then walk us through your mindset when you eventually step on that mound.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously we're super familiar with San Diego and some of the stuff that's happened in the playoffs the past couple of years is not something that we forget, right? So, yeah, I don't want to say that it was like a World Series before the World Series, or that I wouldn't even say that they were like a better team. I just the familiarity. There's kind of like this new rivalry that has formed out there, and so it just felt like a really big series, and yeah, for me, it was just kind of interesting. We go down there, it's 1-1, and I got the ball. So kind of like that big swing game in a 5-game series, that game three is kind of indicative of what's going to happen. And yeah, it was just an interesting game. That the second inning got a little weird on me, and kind of our whole team, it got a little squirrely. But that was kind of the difference I think in our team this year was we could really take a punch a lot different than we used to, and we certainly did that in that game and then win the next two.
Why do
Did
you,
you,
just
yeah.
real quick, I want to build off that. Why do you guys think that you could take a punch differently this year than in previous seasons?
I don't know. I think our team hung out a lot during the playoffs and all that kind of stuff, and that's kind of been talked about. But and largely you just get like a certain group of guys and a certain guys, as weird as it sounds, kind of start separating in the playoffs, and you see that happen. But when people are separating like positively, I think it ends up being good. Like it came out all the bullpen was calling themselves the dogs or the dog pound or something like that or whatever. Like that stuff's positive and that stuff's not something that's always happened. And I think we probably had the right amount of guys that either had played in the big leagues a long time and never really done the playoffs, or guys that have never really made big playoff runs, or guys that were pretty fresh to the big leagues in terms of like Honeywell we're talking about. Like he's never pitched in the playoffs before, but he's been around. So it's like the veteran without being a veteran, but he still has the excitement of pitching in the playoffs. And so we just had a really good group of that. And like for myself, I pitched in a lot of playoff games, but I hadn't done it in 3 years or whatever it was. So you just had a lot of this like excitement about being there and going and doing the thing. When I think in years past, we won the division, what, 8 out of 9 years or something like that. Like you're used to that. And if you have the same group all the time and it's their eighth playoffs and whatever, I think you can get punched in the mouth really early in a series. And in the playoffs, everybody's good enough that if they get you down 2-0 or 1-0 in the right spot, like you can't get out of that facing, guys that are, top of the rotation aces. Like if they're right and you got punched in the mouth last night, like you're down 2-0 and it's kind of done.
Yeah.
So we kind of weathered some of those storms and had a really good group that could take the punch and throw one back, I guess.
I love that you mentioned the 3 year separation between your postseason outings. I'm curious,
Yeah.
like, did that feel new? Like, did that sensation feel unique to you, or was it a familiar thing that you vividly remembered from 21? And it's like, I know exactly what I'm feeling right now in the moment, whether it was against San Diego or New York or the other New
Um,
York.
yeah, it was a little different in the last time I pitched in the playoffs, I was in 21 when I was, arguably one of the better guys in baseball. And then
Right.
to come back 3 years later off of that and be like a guy that not many people thought was going to start games in the playoffs off of the year that I had. I kind of started figuring it out against Atlanta, I think was the first kind of big step. And so my confidence was kind of building, but you never know, man. You can catch a team on a bad day, or you can find all these ways to doubt even when good stuff happens. And so like nobody's not going to have nobody's not going to be engaged in the playoffs, right? So even the fact that I got the 9 outs after the 6-run inning against San Diego, I think was kind of the big turning point for me. I know in New York, I felt very, very comfortable in both of those in terms of who I was and where I was at and what I could do that day and that kind of stuff. But yeah, you go play San Diego in San Diego, the first road game of the playoffs for us. Like there's some nerves and some, uh, you look up and you got a 5.5 ERA for the year too. Like it's a different thing, but getting those 9 outs, I think in the third, fourth, and fifth was huge for me.
Yeah, I want to get inside the mind of an athlete of your caliber in that point because that inning goes awry. You did have 12 ground balls in that outing. When you look at it, like it's not often that you see 6 runs with 12 ground balls on
Right.
your box score. In a moment like that, your nerves going into your first postseason start in a while against San Diego, that inning happens. And then how does it feel to settle down like that in that big of a moment after that roadblock right there? Those next few innings, what does that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, I think having struggled during the season like I did for most of it, a lot of it was the first inning. So I get through the first inning in San Diego clean, I'm good. And then that all happens in the second inning. It's just a weird deal. But I threw some stuff in the dugout, which will happen, and I almost hit our strength coach with it, which I'm glad I didn't. That was a big win in itself that he
Yeah.
didn't get smoked. But no, I mean, I think for me, there's like this feeling of like, okay, I've got to be a professional now and go and like keep us where we're at. Like, there's all this excitement and all this like stuff you dream of, the fame and the glory or getting the last out, right? Like that's all the stuff you think of when you're a kid. But I think being a major league starting pitcher a lot of times is like going and getting 8 more outs than you can or than you should because you just gave up 6 runs, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the stuff that people don't really understand and especially in the playoffs it's so big just because of the bullpen, right? And um like it's not like I went and threw 8 innings and completely saved the bullpen, right? But I didn't throw two. And so it just helps and it's like these little incremental wins that especially when you're a team like us that we really rely on our depth and having guys that are fresh that we can kind of keep rolling after you. And that even gets tested in the playoffs. Obviously, Trinan threw 2 1/3 in the last game off of like a back-to-back, right? Like the stuff just gets squirrely like that in the playoffs. So kind of every compounding negative thing that you can avoid is so big in the playoffs. And um, yeah, I mean, I think that was just like some way of having some sort of victory for myself that way.
Yeah. It was really funny seeing the clip of you saying like I'm a problem now, figuring out the arsenal and the pitch mix and everything. And I think everybody realized that the new Bueller was a problem in New York in a good way. And dude, like that was you're shaking your head. I'm not talking Yankee, dude. I'm not talking that yet. I'm talking Mets now.
No,
Um,
he didn't even give up a run against the Yankees, right? We're talking about being comfortable, and then we're talking about fucking putting us in his back pocket. There's a difference. So I got to hear about him being comfortable. Yeah, we're gonna bring this up again. Great.
let's start with the Mets though, because that was oh damn, like you found exactly who you want to be right now. What was it that you felt like you found, if anything, or it was just like, hey, ball's coming out today, ball's coming out right today. We're gonna be sharp.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like I think there was some mechanical stuff that just took a long time to figure out. And once I did, then I started like, it's just weird, man. Like you can have one thing wrong in your delivery, and I tell the ball to go here. It felt like it's supposed to go right here, and it goes like 3 feet left. And you're just like, I don't understand this. But once we kind of got my back leg working right, then like the normal things, the normal feels started working. And then it was like kind of almost not a spring training, but I just had to like go do it in games.
Yeah.
And then you get the adrenaline of the playoffs and all that. And I just think, I think the matchup against the Mets was very similar. They're very similar teams to me in terms of how I match up with them as Atlanta. And I had the good game in Atlanta. I think that kind of helped. And all right, this is what I have to make sure I'm able to throw. And no, I felt good. Obviously, the first at bat to Lindor, I was going out of the windup, and the mound there was so hard that I couldn't get my foot in there,
Mm.
and I kept slipping, not slipping, but just my foot wasn't moving right. So I went to the stretch, and then I think that just gave me kind of a even more simplified approach, just without having all the stuff going on. And I think there was a good wind that day. It was blowing right at us, so the ball was going crazy. And uh, yeah, it was a fun outing. Obviously, you want to, I didn't want to just go 4 innings, but
Right.
as long as they don't score, I don't really care.
So what was it with your back leg? If it's not, rocket science that we're talking
Yeah,
about, like
I
what
mean,
was the feel?
there's like this old thing called feel versus real, like what I think is going on and what's actually happening. And in rehab, especially just the way that I kind of operate, I'm very based on these certain feels. I actually made one of the things that I've always felt it didn't actually happen, but I felt like it did. By the end of rehab, that was actually happening. So my back knee was staying really far back and it was almost outside of my back foot, which means you have like so much to like unload at the end. And I started pulling balls because if there's too much back there, you're just kind of stuck. And the only way to get out of that is just bail left.
Yeah.
And so I was just missing left so much early in the season. And that also just means you're like not in a good spot on the ball and all that kind of stuff. But once I got a little bit of drift going and my knee under me, then as you're going down the mound, the knee stays there, but it feels like it's going back from your body, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it should feel like it's going back because your body's going here and your knee's staying there. Mine was staying like this, and my knee was going back before I went anywhere.
Okay. So in
Then by
turn,
the end of it, you're just in such a bad spot that this has to spin instead of like the separation and all the stuff that everyone talks about.
gotcha.
So after
But
you, oh, go ahead.
uh,
I was going to say after you walk off the mound, 4 innings, 2 hits,
yeah.
6 punchies. The look that you gave when you're walking off the mound, it looked like, oh, I'm a problem now. It looked like that quote. To me, because you watch a lot of UFC, it
Mhm.
looked like you had just gotten the knockout. And it's the Conor McGregor almost look when he's looking out to the rest of the crowd, being like, I fucking just did that. And it's not the smiling, it's not like the happy, like, oh, that was awesome. It was, I'm a problem. So then, knowing that the Dodgers are probably going to get past the Mets, I'm like, well, he's just going to destroy us now. Is that when you felt that you were the problem in a
No,
good way?
I mean, I think once we got, like, I started feeling good against San Diego. Like I said, the last 9 outs were like a big thing for me, but we're also down 2-1 and it's San Diego. And so, like, yeah, I feel good about it. I survived it, but like, our team might not, right? So, like, there's nowhere to go if we're not playing anymore, right? And so, once we beat the Padres, it was kind of like, all right, let's go. But yeah, that outing against the Mets kind of like solidified it, I guess, in my brain. And you do stuff like that or get through a spot like that. Like some of the failure that I had all year kind of like fades away in your brain, right? You just start like narrowing what you're basing everything off of. And I've always been a guy that can take a cue that I found on a Tuesday in my delivery or for a pitch or whatever, find a new grip and use it in a game on Wednesday. And so for me, kind of that shortening of like your mental kind of database to go, all right, I'm only going to include good stuff now, or like my last one was good, so that's all I have to think about. I think probably isn't like a great way to go about 162 games, but I think in the month of October, it can definitely be a beneficial thing.
Well, and I'm sure the hyper focus on each night when you get the ball in the postseason is just like
Yeah.
it's elevated. It's 2x, 3x what you got in the regular season, and obviously every regular season start matters. But
Yeah.
um, I was watching you during the postseason. I'm like, this dude just loves pitching on the road in the postseason. He likes being
Mhm.
that guy. Do you have a preference, like in terms of a postseason start? Did you want the ball at Dodger Stadium, or it's like, you know what, I'm going to be the villain tonight. I like doing this.
No, I mean, I think in LA it's the best fans in baseball, and I've pitched some big games in LA that have been unbelievable. But um, yeah, I mean, pitching on the road's fun. I've had some bad ones on the road too, though, man. That happens. In Atlanta, I've had a couple bad ones, but yeah, it's funny because I've thought back on it. Like, I don't know if I've ever really pitched on the road and pitched really well in the playoffs until this year. I had one good game in Milwaukee my rookie year. Then in 19, well, I got beat up in Atlanta. threw twice against Milwaukee, once on the road, and then my World Series start that year was at home. 19, they were both at home against Washington. 20 was 20. 21, I pitched okay in San Francisco. Gave up a homer to Posey. The rest was on the road.
I'm looking at the home road splits in your career in the postseason. What do you think your home ERA is in the postseason? You've got 10 starts in LA. Maybe one in Arlington too in 2020. That counted as a home game.
Well, I was at home almost every game in Arlington. Or we were in the home dugout. I'm trying to remember how many times I pitched in white.
You've got 10 postseason starts at home.
I bet I have like a one at home.
You got a 201. Opponents are hitting a buck 91 against you.
Yeah, because the Brewers in 20 was we were home and I gave up like 4 runs.
Damn.
Okay, so follow up to that question.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy doing it at Yankee Stadium even more than maybe even doing it at Dodger Stadium? Because when you throw up those arms and the crowd is dead silent and it's just the Dodgers on the field, it's got to feel pretty good, unfortunately.
No, so New York, there was like against the Yankees, there was a couple things about this game, right? Especially like the fans and stuff. First off, they treat you so good in New York, like in the visiting clubhouse. You're like so comfortable. The food's unbelievable. It's like it's pro there, which is really like kind of a cool deal. But, and I don't know how intentional this was or who made this decision, but the games at whatever, say it's at 7:10 or I think it was at 7:15, and they got Fat Joe going out there, right? They turned off the entire stadium lights, including the bullpens, from 7:02 until 7:13. They did not turn the lights back on until the Yankees went onto the field.
No way.
Mind games.
So there was like 8 or 10 minutes that I needed to throw about 12 more pitches that the catcher could not see the ball. And so I could not throw it. I didn't get to throw a single ball. So what I ended up doing was we have the TrackMan out there, which is on a tripod. I fired 6 balls directly at the TrackMan before that start. Like normally what I do is I'll do all my wind up, we do the anthem, I do my stretch. Yeah. I got like 3 throws out of the stretch in that before that game. And then like 6 of them I just whizzed at the TrackMan with Pryor just throwing me a new ball every time.
Yeah.
So there was like 6 balls sprayed all over the bullpen. I walked in, the lights are still off. The Yankees take the field while I'm walking in. I walk up to the umpires. I go, they got to fix this shit for tomorrow. And he was like, yeah, I don't know why they did that or how they can do that. I was like, well, you guys need to tell somebody. So we walk into the dugout and everyone was like, you good? Because I was pissed off. And I was like, yeah, they fucked up. And then I just walked in and then we had the game. But so everything goes pretty clean for a minute. 4th inning, Teo makes that throw and I'm backing up, but I'm late. And so I'm like almost against the backstop, but I'm not even turned around. Like I just saw it like this. I wasn't like standing there like you're supposed to be. Yeah. So I ended up screaming like directly at the people in the front row, like very, very, very loudly. And I don't know what I said. I imagine it had some F word in it, but like right in somebody's face. Like I imagine I made the same face that keeps going around of me, like in the little not dog pile thing. But I bet it looked just like that, and I bet I was like 18 inches from these people's face.
That was an all-time 2-second video of you that Rob Friedman put out, like pitching ninja, friend of the program. I mean, just the sheer look of you look like you want to kill somebody. Like it was awesome, but in the best way. And that was right after you got the final out. But that start, do you have any critique of Fat Joe's performance? Like, what? Do you want to give it a letter grade or anything?
At least he was great, right? At least you saw a really good concert with Fat Joe in there, wasn't it?
I heard it was. I don't remember any of it. I heard it was absolutely awful.
It was some of the worst television I've ever watched.
Yeah, yeah.
But to be fair, like we had the Ice Cube one, and so if they hadn't already been planning that, and like the plausible out for this or for it not going the way that everyone thought it would go, because I don't want to tell anyone they're poor shit or whatever. Like Fat Joe, I know a couple songs, it is what it is. If they tried to put that together in like 4 days, the fact that it even got off the ground is like a feat, right? Like if they were trying to rebuttal that we had Ice Cube, you know what I mean? But if they had been planning that the whole time, from what I heard, because obviously I was throwing balls at the track man, I was pretty mad and I wasn't really worried about it. But if they had been planning that, I heard it didn't go so good.
No. So you're telling me you threw 5 shutty and they messed up with your timing? So it's like you could have even done better,
It just made
or
me very mad. They used to do that in Arizona to me a lot too.
that's what I'm
Really?
saying. Did the anger actually end up helping you, do you think?
I imagine it helped, yeah.
Well, damn it. And it did.
But
I
Arizona used to mess with us bad like that. They used to do it to me and Kershaw a lot. So in Arizona, the bullpen, all their yard work stuff, like the mowers and all that,
yeah.
and they have turf now, but they still have all this equipment, is the bullpen's like this, and the door to all that is this big, like garage door through the bullpen. So they used to walk back and forth like while you were warming up, which was an interesting one. But that's the only other time I've had like a weird, seemingly like coordinated effort to mess with you.
Hmm. Okay. So you have a great start. You come out of the pen. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this have already heard, your recount of, not throwing a ball and then getting up there and it's like, if you need me, I'm going to be out here. It's such a cool story to hear. And my favorite quote that I saw from you after that happened, after you got the final out, was Andy McCullough asked you whose idea it was.
Yeah.
And your response was, "Whose idea did you think it was?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know what? That's Buehler. Like that's exactly the type of mentality you want from a guy that is a starting pitcher that's ready to go get that final out of the World Series." And obviously, you mentioned, what would 22 do, and he would do exactly that. I mean, now that you've had a month and a half to kind of sit on that pitch, sit on that inning, what does that inning like mean to you as a baseball person? Like from when you were, 5 years old when you first started playing to now, it's been your life.
Yeah. I mean, the win save thing is such like I mean, it's like a very small club, right? Like to get a win and a save in the same World Series. And, I first got called up, obviously the Giants and Dodgers and all that stuff was going pretty good. And, but Bumgarner and Kirsch have always been buddies. And so I would basically follow Kirsch around for a couple of years. And so I got to know Bumgarner just talking to him before games and stuff. And, he's the only guy I can remember ever seeing do that. And it created this like mystique around him. And, um, there's probably less guys that have done that than throwing perfect games, I imagine. I think there's only four of us.
I would assume so.
So I don't know. It's one of those things that like it's hard to ever see it actually playing out the way it did. I was in the bullpen during game 6 when we beat Tampa too. Kirsch and I were both out there. They didn't really want me out there because I was supposed to start literally the next day if we lost, but
Yeah.
I just told them I wanted to go out there. And I've done that I've gone out there a couple times. I did it against the Mets at home. Um, but they've never been like start throwing. So for it to happen in like the biggest time I've ever, attempted to do it or whatever, it was a really weird deal. And it did have to happen. Like a lot of things had to happen that like weren't necessarily good for us,
Yeah.
for me to get in the game. So it's also a weird mental thing because you're out there and you don't want to like be overtly positive when like weird stuff starts to happen, right? Like Jack is a top of the rotation starting pitcher, goes an inning and 2/3, whatever, 2 inning, whatever it was, I forget. Like that's the first like thing that kind of like I love Jack. Jack and I have been buddies for a long time. Like I don't want that to happen,
No.
but it had to for that to, so I don't know. You're just like you're out there and stuff happens and you're like, oh, like that's good for me if I want to get in this game, but it's bad for our team or whatever. So yeah, it's a weird mental thing. And yeah, like the actual story of it like happening kind of started on the bus. I told Gomer, like, hey, if it gets real squirrely, I'll be fine. We'll see where I'm at, but I think I can do it. And
Yeah.
yeah, inside getting warmed up, and one of the other front office guys is always in the gym, and I was like, hey, is this thing getting like squirrely enough? And he's like, yeah, I guess. Like, all right, I'm going to get dressed. So yeah, the rest kind of is history, I guess. But yeah, it's a weird deal, that thing.
One quote that stuck with me in that Mookie Betts podcast, of course, I'm a problem now, which got me fired up. And I want to talk about that when we talk about, what fans should expect with you when you join a new team or you're back with the Dodgers. But you said, and I quote, nobody in the world is more okay losing that game than me. And I
Yeah.
was thinking to myself, this guy just threw five shutty against us. He just is coming off four shutty against the Mets. He looks like a dominant force that nobody's going to stop him. So my thought is when you come into the game, all right, World Series is over. That was my exact thought. Hand to God, the World
Yeah.
Series is over. So to hear you say that, I was shocked. Can you just kind of speak to what you were feeling in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think the failure of this year has kind of changed the way I think about baseball. I think long term it's going to be a lot better for me. Like I think I'm going to be a lot more successful having gone through it. But largely I haven't failed on that kind of level ever playing this game, right? So to go through it and have this like I don't know what's going on for an extended period of time is it's definitely like a humbling thing, but you also learn a lot about yourself, right? Like okay, like it's my third bad start in a row, and I still got to go and do my shit in the gym and throw, and I'm still going to be excited to play on my start day and all these things, right? And so I think that's kind of what I meant, right? Like I had gone through it. Largely, we're the most talented team in baseball. We have really, really good players everywhere. We've had a starting rotation that's been elite all year, even through all these injuries. Like have been the guy that hasn't been as good as everyone else. Like if somebody has to lose that game, like it's already gone thus far. Like I can take it mentally, I can handle it. I'd rather me lose this game than another guy that then their confidence, then they're in the thing I was in 3 months ago, right? Like I just felt very prepared to be the guy that had to play bad to win a World Series. And so uh, if it was that moment, it was that moment. And luckily it went really well for us and for me. But yeah, I think like the whole time you're warming up, you don't know because you're not in that situation much, right? Like I threw 5 innings 2 days earlier. I don't know how I should have felt. I don't know what this ball is supposed to look like right now because it's going to feel different. And so the whole time you're warming up, you're like asking the catcher, asking the guys behind you, asking the guys in the bullpen, like, is this coming out good? Like,
Is it crispy? Yeah, the word was
yeah,
crispy that you were using. Yeah.
yeah, like it feels so different. Your arm just feels so different than it normally does. And you're not doing all these routines and you didn't play catch the same way. And I didn't play catch at all. And so there's just all these variables that as a starting pitcher, you eliminate. Like there's largely, you're going to feel pretty similar the first ball you throw as a starting pitcher every day, outside of whatever soreness or injuries or whatever. But I had no like reference point of what I should feel like in the bullpen. And so you're just at some point you walk out there and hope it starts going well. But yeah, I threw a heater, like my first heater was like 97 or something like that. And I in Yankee Stadium they have the numbers and all that up there, and it was kind of what it's supposed to be. And all right, I guess. And I guess I think the three batter minimum thing is interesting too, having like kind of felt it on the other side where I've never like gone in to face one guy and
Yeah.
you're out there. It's like, okay, if this goes bad, then I have to face another guy. And if that goes bad, then I have to face another guy. And obviously, I'm only out here because we're kind of at the end of it. Like, so yeah, I don't want to say it felt very lonely out there, but it was kind of all sink or swim, I think.
And then when you get that final strikeout, did you just black out? I mean,
No,
it's
well, I like the celebration. I like how it ended. I like what I did. I don't want to say that it was planned, but I don't think there was any alternatives. Like I think that was exactly what would have happened had I closed out a World Series when I was 12 years old or if I was 42 and hanging out. Like I just think that's what my body was going to do regardless.
Yeah. So it happens. I mean, that celebration was awesome. And I was watching the coverage for like a couple hours after the fact, just seeing the shots from the clubhouse and on the field and all that. Get on the flight. Saw what? FaceTime from your buddy Chase Rice. Were there other FaceTimes that came through?
Yeah, my wife hates it, but when I get a little banged up and I'm excited, I just start calling on my buddies. But
I love that.
when I get banged up.
um, yeah, I talked to Michael Phelps at one point. Uh,
That's a crazy
I-
FaceTime. Michael Phelps and Walker Buehler.
yeah,
That's
I don't
electric.
know how we got to know each other in Phoenix a little bit. I haven't seen him like in person in years, even though I was out there. We couldn't line up our schedules for some reason. He probably was avoiding me out there, but yeah, he answered the FaceTime. We had a little on the plane with some of the boys, and it was fun, man.
When you got extra banged up, was there anybody that you tried to call who maybe didn't answer? Like you just randomly call like Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods or something?
No, I mean I kind of went through anyone that I had in the phone book, you know. Um,
Just scroll. Yeah, they can use a
Like
call right now.
somebody
yeah,
give me LeBron's number. I'm gonna
yeah.
try.
I talked to Rob Lowe for a little while. He's a big Dodger guy,
Nice.
but yeah, we just kind of roll through it.
I've got one more question about the parade because you wearing Oral's jersey and Oral wearing yours in
Yeah,
studio and at the ballpark was like, holy shit, how cool is this from a Dodger perspective?
yeah. So
And I
that started
know,
in New
yeah,
York. That started against the Mets. So I had looked up old jerseys. I forget why, but I was looking them up, and I remember they had it at the time. They had like the gray Oral jersey,
yeah,
and so we play in New York, and I forget. I was sitting with one of our guys, Lon Rosen, and I was like, "Hey, if we play Game 7, I'm gonna wear that jersey.
yeah,
Can you get me one?" Because Oral had beat the Mets in Game 7. I was like, "Okay, this would be pretty cool." So we couldn't find one. Called the people at Fanatics, they didn't have any. So we called Oral and was like, "Hey, I know you like, do you have an extra one? It doesn't have to be like a crazy one." He's like, "Yeah, I'll call my wife." So that was actually his alternate jersey. He had two jerseys at the time. One of them's in the Hall of Fame, and then he had that one at his house. So that one had like his number written on the inside. It was like one of his two jerseys that he actually had from '88.
damn,
So uh, yeah, I wore it to a game, like in the tunnel or whatever they call it,
yeah,
because I knew I wasn't going to wear it or whatever. Yeah, then I texted him. We won against the Mets. And I was like, "Hey, can I wear it out?" And he goes, "You wear it wherever you want, buddy. Like get whatever you want on it." My wife was like, "No, you're not wearing this to like the club or whatever that we went to after we beat the Mets." So yeah, we thought the parade was fitting, but it ended up being pretty good.
dude. I mean, and him wearing yours, like, obviously he's got immense respect for you, and he's watched you, like, he's been
Yeah,
sitting up there calling your entire career to this
yeah.
point, and he has been part of the soundtrack to your career to this point. What's the level of respect between you and a guy who is, I think, one of the more underappreciated pitchers of that generation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all kind of starts right with like when I got drafted, everyone said we looked really similar, and so it was just kind of like this weird in that we got to know each other. Even when I was in minor league camp, I would like go over and talk to him
Yeah.
for a while. I have like some really old pictures of us sitting and talking and whatever. But yeah, we used to hang out a lot on the road, and COVID happened, and kind of how they travel changed, and so we haven't gotten to hang out as much as we used to my first couple of years. But yeah, he's been awesome. I think that's part of the lore of playing for these huge market teams or traditionally successful teams, especially like LA, where everyone talks about Kirsch and Sandy and their relationship. And Sandy and I have gotten to know each other. He's around a good amount. But Oral was kind of that for me, I guess. And so yeah, it's been pretty cool. And yeah, it had the '88 World Series patch on it and everything. So yeah, it was a cool deal.
Pretty damn good mentors down there in LA, Sandy or Hershiser, Clayton Kershaw. Yeah, you're a pretty good company. My last question for you is you're a problem now.
Yeah.
So so what should because Dodger fans know what they should expect if you go back, but if you don't, X team signs Walker Buehler. What are they getting now besides being a problem?
Oh, I'm not gonna sales pitch myself, man. No, you know what? Like at the end of the day, like kind of what we talked through, like I've gotten kind of through the failure and I feel really comfortable where my body's at, where kind of my life is at, and um, yeah, I just see the game a little bit different than I used to, and yeah, I'm looking forward to next year.
Hell yeah.
Love it.
Hell
Walker
yeah.
Buehler, appreciate you, man. I'm sure we'll talk at some point after the new year. So happy holidays. First,
Well,
is this first Christmas with the kid?
yeah, first Christmas.
Any
Dude.
big presents?
She kind of has it all already, I feel like.
Yeah, but she's not listening. What's under the tree?
I don't know. My wife handles most of that stuff. I'll get her something, but
Good.
I
Nice.
love it.
Get
I
her
don't
she'll
know.
get her
get
a
something
bottle of
nice when
bourbon. Why not?
she'll get a big one when she's 16, not when she's one.
Yeah. They don't remember the birth or this Christmas anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can do
Exactly.
whatever.
Walker, appreciate you, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys. See you.
As always, it is phenomenal visiting with Walker, and can't wait to see where he ends up in the not too distant future, maybe distant future, but depends what you depends what distance means to you. But he will have a new home in 2025. Maybe it's LA, maybe it's not. We shall see. Let's talk about two teams that seem like they're not fits for Walker Buehler. One because he apparently already said no. He reportedly already said no. I read that article on Trade Rumors.
Yeah.
And another is cutting payroll. You want to start with the team cutting or the team that kind of has to escalate to a point where they don't get a grievance filed against them?
I think the A's might be a sneaky banger. Let's save them for last and let's start with the Minnesota Twins because the
That works.
Twins are in a tough spot, right? We're playing general manager here, but we have some major roadblocks that we somewhat have for other teams, but this ownership group has come out and basically said it. Let me talk about what I mean. After 40 years of owning the Minnesota Twins, it's been 3 generations of this family, the Polid family, announced the Twins are for sale, or at least they are considering selling the team. And that ownership group imposed a $130 million payroll budget. Right now, according to Spot Track, they're projected to be about 8.6 million over. So that tells me that we are going to have to actually cut payroll in this episode, something that all Twins fans really want to listen to. So I hope you stay tuned. There are a couple of moves that we can make. They did say at the winter meetings that they do want a right-handed bat. Makes sense. Platoon with Trevor Larnach or Matt Wallner. We'll talk about some good fits there. Um, but they haven't really made any moves besides their Rule 5 draft pick. So we can talk about their stats on offense: 11th in OPS this season, 14th in home runs, 30th in stolen bases. It would be nice to add some speed, but I don't even know if we can add anything to this team. Starting pitching: 22nd in ERA, 6th in whip. That's a difference that, doesn't often happen. And with second in strikeouts per nine, the bullpen, 19th in ERA, 13th in whip, 6th in strikeouts per nine. And they have some good, outstanding free agents. But again, it's probably going to be for other teams to latch onto. Carlos
Mhm.
Santana, I think, is a good fit for anybody. Caleb Thielbar, Anthony Descalfani, Max Kepler. The mutual option declined by the team for Kyle Farmer and Manuel Margot, and Alex Kirilloff at age 27 retired.
Yeah.
And he said it was a lot. It was mostly about the injuries that he has sustained over these past couple of years of Major League Baseball. He was a guy that when he was coming up, you and Arm were very high on, or at least I know Arm was. I assume you reflect that same sentiment about Kirilloff. I know that when I was watching him, the dude has a sweet left-handed swing, could play some defense. He was an exciting bat, but injuries got the best of him, and he said he's at peace now. So wishing good things for Alex Kirilloff in his retirement. Maybe he comes back one day, maybe he doesn't, but for this exercise, he is not on the Twins.
Yeah.
Kind of stinks, Jack, that all we're doing here is really cutting payroll.
Yeah, it does. But the goal of the exercise is to make them a little bit better as
Yes.
we go into 2025. And I think that we can make them a little bit better. And,
Yes.
does that mean financially? Does that mean on field? I think we can find a hybrid of both.
Yeah.
And I think that there's some dead money essentially. Like it's not true dead money, but I think that there's some money that they really want to get out from underneath that is a bit movable.
Yeah, I agree. But let's talk about their needs. Let's fill this right-handed bat move
Yeah.
because that is what they want to do, and it makes sense to do that because this lineup is loaded with lefties,
Yeah.
and they could use a right-handed bat. The cheapest, best right-handed bat I can find is not Randall Grichuk. I know that Randall Grichuk is kind of the perfect fit because he's been more of that righty platoon bat for a while now, crushes left-handed pitching. But I think Randall Grichuk might deserve a little bit more money than I think the Twins are willing to give. And
Hmm.
who knows, Randall Grichuk might deserve a starting spot in outfield here. So maybe he's upwards of 10 million, which the Twins do not have. So somebody really cheap who I think would be a perfect platoon is Ramon Laureano.
Okay.
Hit 305 in 102 plate appearances with an 869 OPS against left-handed pitching. Can't hit righties at all. That's why he's probably going to be reduced to a platoon bat anyway this offseason.
Yep.
What's he going to be worth? 3 million?
Less.
Maybe,
Two.
probably.
I think
Yeah.
two.
I think that's the cheapest way to go about it. I think bing bang boop unless you have any other options here.
No, I think that's the right way to go about it if you're adding not via the trade route.
Yeah.
I do think that there's a way to add via the trade route if you want to, but let's stick with the free agent thing right now.
Yeah. So I think we just add Ramon Laureano here. I mean, I was looking kind of at the trade block. I was also looking at a Mark Canha. I think Mark Canha is going to be a little bit too expensive for this team. And I mean, on the trade block too, there wasn't anyone that I was kind of in love with. And I do just think Ramon Laureano has a chance to be like an invite to, spring training on the veterans minimum.
Yeah. I feel like he gets a guaranteed deal somewhere, but it's not like he's the all-world defender that he was initially
No,
pitched as when he first came onto the scene.
I arguably think he's not a very good defender now.
Yeah.
Not
The
even,
metrics, the
not
metrics
even
are
now
really
he's average. No, he's
right.
worse.
Right.
So if you can only hit lefties, that's your only thing that you do. And that's like kind of the only reason the Twins would get him anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's a better option than going the trade route.
Okay. Now I have a trade match between the two teams that we're playing GM for today.
Okay.
They need to get out from some money.
Yeah.
They don't like have to. It was weird because ownership essentially said that they don't plan to chop the way that they did going into 2024, which I think was a $30 million chop. But it's not like they've promised to escalate or anything like that. And you saw that number 130. You want to stay around 130.
Yeah.
Um, I see two guys that are in that you make more than $5 million that I would feel very, very comfortable moving and still competing. They have a starting pitching surplus. Zebby Matthews right now, Festa right now, they're slated to go to the minor leagues.
Yeah.
Why? There's no point to me.
I agree.
So why couldn't you get out of about $7 million of Chris Paddock?
Yeah.
It was 88 innings at a 4.99 ERA, and Paddock this year is going to be owed $7.5 million in his age 29 season. I don't know where his value is.
The underlying metrics are pretty good,
Yeah.
which is a good sign. And when I watched Chris Paddock last year, I thought he had some giddy up on the fastball still. He's a pitcher that I'd be intrigued adding, and I would even pay him to give up absolutely nothing. Like if you're saying, will you take Chris Paddock and his 7.5 million for anyone on your roster in your mind, anybody will take. I think that's Chris Paddock's value. Is he's worth the money if you have to give up zero for him.
Yeah.
And I think the Twins would be willing to give up or get, excuse me, zero for him to get off that money because that basically puts us at the 130 mark around there by just making that move when, again, to your point, they have a surplus of value.
So I think the A's have a lot of outfield options. And Minnesota could save about $5 million. You're going to laugh. Swapping Chris Paddock for Miguel Andujar.
No.
Why not?
Well, I mean, yeah. Yeah, my first instinct is, ugh, what a ugh.
I
But
know.
they need a right-handed bat. I guess I was looking for more of the platoon in the outfield because Miguel and he played a lot of left.
Played a lot of left.
Played a lot of left.
Played in the corners, and Miguel Andujar last year against left-handed pitching was 23 for 56 with a 995 OPS.
I think you're cooking.
I'm
I think
just
you're
saying
cooking.
it. Handedness splits in his career, and Miguel Andujar's career, I feel like, is not one to look at where you see consistency because he was so good at such a young age, and then he was really not good, and then he found it again, and he's 29 years old. He's going to be 30 years old, but in his career, he's a 766 OPS guy against left-handed pitching.
I like it.
Think
I think
about
you
it.
do that because I think you're clearing up money at the same time while adding the right-handed bat. And let's say Ramon Laureano does want 2 million. Okay, well then we're out on you maybe. Right? So if we're saving money and adding that
Andujar
right-handed bat, I love it.
Andujar is 2.75. That's his estimate this year.
And it would just
Paddock
be a
is
straight swap.
7.5. You save 5.
I mean, you're saving 5. That's the name of the game here.
And your rotation, I don't think suffers one bit. So
And
your
again,
rotation, yeah,
to your point, who would you rather have, Andujar or Laureano? I'd rather
I'd
have
much
Andujar.
rather have Andujar.
Me
His
too.
bat, I'd much rather have that.
I think you're cooking.
Starting rotation with Paddock, Lopez, Ryan, Ober, Simeon, Paddock. Starting rotation without Paddock, Lopez, Ryan, Ober, Simeon, and then Zebby Matthews, David Festa, Louis Varland if you need.
I
If you
think you
need it.
should be.
Like,
I think the Twins should be doing that because I think
yeah,
they need to figure out between this cluster of 3 who's going to stick here. Because I think Simeon Woods Richardson proved that he is the 4th starter.
he's going to
Who
stick.
is the 5th? What do you get out of getting Chris Paddock innings here? What do you
I,
get?
I'd rather audition Zebby and Festa at
1,000%.
$750,000 a piece than have 7.5 committed to Chris Paddock.
No doubt. No
Okay.
doubt in my mind.
So that's move number one.
Yes. There are a couple
Christian
other guys.
Vasquez
Yeah, 10 million.
is pretty untradeable,
Yeah.
but a team that is clearly willing to take on some money could be interested in a reunion because their catching situation is bad and got even worse.
Talk to me.
Kyle Teal's a White Sox now in the Garrett Crochet deal. So their catching situation right now is Connor Wong and Carlos Narvaez. And Teal's not waiting in triple anymore. So could Vasquez go and the Twins pay $2 million of that for literally nobody? For
They
a
might have
nothing burger in return.
they might have to pay half of that for
Okay,
nothing.
you pay half of that for a guy that hit, 280 in the DSL last year.
Sure. Send it
Sure.
in.
Do you the question is not what would they get in return? The question is, would the Red Sox entertain taking on that salary dump for Minnesota?
I feel like the Red Sox would just feel like all we're doing is helping you guys. But they do kind of need a backup catcher here.
They need a backup catcher, and Christian Vasquez is a backup catcher at this point.
What's another team that could potentially do it? That's potentially, I mean, would the Blue Jays do it? Their catching situation is Alejandro Kirk and a 33-year-old Taylor Heineman who's coming off 16 plate appearances, slashing 083, 313, 083.
They could very well think about doing that. And their minor league options right now are Ali Sanchez on a non-roster invite and Phil Clark, who's essentially a first baseman.
Do we have a bidding war here?
Okay, the Red Sox mandate that the Twins pay it down to 5. Blue Jays say, you know what, we'll take on 6 of the 10.
This is going to sound mean, and I don't want it to sound mean, but tell me if I'm not being truthful. Don't the Blue Jays seem far more likely to do this than the Red Sox when we're looking at who's running the team? I mean, come on now. It sounds mean, but is anybody listening disagreeing with me at the same time?
You're right.
Ross Atkins is probably like, ooh. He probably might be listening and he's fired up right now. Shout out Ross Atkins.
So what we just did with those two moves is we just subtracted $5 million by swapping Paddock and Andujar.
Yeah.
And say you got to eat 4. You subtract $6 million.
We're under.
$11 million.
Yeah.
Whatever that estimate is, what was that estimate?
About 8.6 over.
8.6 over?
We're under.
We subtracted 9.
One more I got for you. And I think he could actually net you a good return. But I don't know if the Twins want to do it. Willie Castro is coming off a great first half, definitely slowed down in the second. Provides some versatility. He's still young. He's making 6.2. I agree with you. We can do this by just getting rid of Vasquez, just getting rid of Paddock, and we can go like this and the podcast is over.
Yeah.
Or we could see what they would potentially get for Willie Castro because it's actually going to net them prospects, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that worth it? I could hear both sides of it. I more just wanted to float it out there as something that another way for them to shed salary while getting a real package instead of who wants them for free.
So I say no. And the reason I say no is what we talked about pre record. This team cannot stay healthy. You have a bunch of guys that play 80 to 90 games in a given season,
Yeah.
like a bunch of guys that have injury concerns. Unfortunately, Brooks Lee is in that clumping with Royce Lewis and Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton.
Yeah,
Sucks.
I bet that rehab room is fun. I mean, the whole
Uh,
team
you-
there. That's
Hey,
mean.
there's a.
That's
I
mean.
bet like, hey, you cater steakhouses for lunch.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of money in that rehab room.
No,
Um,
and that's our problem with the Twins
yeah,
because when we look at the Twins roster right now, we're shedding payroll. It sounds doom and gloom.
and it
This
still
team's
looks
still going
awesome
to
on
compete.
paper. They can win
There's
the division on paper.
they're absolutely still going to compete. I look at this lineup and I don't see any weaknesses here. We still love Royce Lewis. We still like
Yeah.
Jose Miranda. I think Brooks Lee is going to have a great year for them. Jeffers still at catcher, can definitely hit some home runs. Wallner and Larnick, they rake, especially Wallner. And you still got Buxton, Cray, and Castro. I mean, this is a good lineup and a good rotation and a pretty damn good bullpen too.
So the reason I'm not moving Willie Castro is Ryan Jeffers was third on that team last year with 465 plate appearances.
Hmm.
Second was Carlos Santana at 594. So
Oh, he's gone.
160 more plate appearances. And Willie Castro was the leader at 635 plate appearances.
Got to keep him. Stays on the field.
There were five guys on the Minnesota Twins last year with 400 or more plate appearances. There were two with 470 or more, and one of them's a free agent. So you keep the guy that was on the field and has that utility ability in Willie Castro.
I totally agree with you. I just wanted to float it up like if we aren't able to give up, like let's say Ross Atkins is smarter than we think he is.
Yeah.
And he's like, I actually don't want Christian Vasquez.
Nobody wants him.
Yeah.
Like no one wants him. And that is, I think, when the Twins start to panic. And that is when they consider moving a Willie Castro.
What do you think you'd get for him?
I think you'd
Market
get a
stop.
decent bit for him. I mean, it's not like he was awesome. Do you have the WAR in front of you? Because he can play a bunch of different places defensively, but it's not like he's really good anywhere defensively.
He was a 3-win player last year.
Yeah.
3.1 F4, 2.5 the year before. Could play a lot of different positions. Stole 33 bags in 2023. Only stole 14 last year, but saw a little bit of a power uptick, even though the slugging percentage went down. But yeah, he's still a good defender in multiple different positions. Just to talk about that versatility, 56 games at short, 40 at second base, 34 in left, 30 in center, 27 at third base. Played at least 25 games at 5 different positions. Good for you. That's sick.
It is sick.
That's my analysis. That's awesome.
I like the analysis. I'm looking at the advanced metrics at what he was doing defensively. When you look at DRS, second base, -3 DRS. At third base, 0. At shortstop, -9. In left, -3. In center, -3.
He was terrible everywhere. How is this possible? But the
I
WAR
mean,
disagrees.
yeah,
Whatever. He's
defensive
fine.
value, baby.
He's fine.
I don't know. I feel like the answer is a guy in the number 10 range in somebody's farm system.
Okay, like 10 to 15.
Yeah, I think like if sent him to I'm trying to think about a system I know well. If you sent him to the Cubs, let's say, you're probably getting like you're not hunting in that Kevin Alcantara, James Triantos
No,
bucket. You are in tier 2.
definitely.
And I think that's probably like a Pablo Aliendo, like that kind of thing. You're getting him back for Willie Castro at the price point. And I don't think it's worth it because you've got a guy that stays on the field and can play everywhere.
I was going to say no because I don't even know who that is.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just don't know if you're getting a guy that it's like, oh yeah, he's a fringe top 100 prospect for Willie Castro straight up at the price point again.
No,
But
definitely not top 100. Yeah,
yeah, so what's the point when you know that he's going to be on the field for you?
agreed. Like you're hoping the prospect that you get debuts.
Yeah. Tell us if it's not realistic that a team eats 6 of Vasquez's 10. I think there's a team out there, and I think it's Toronto or Boston, that
Toronto.
would be willing to take on 5 or 6 of the $10 million that Vasquez has owed this year.
Even 4. I mean, we take 4.
Even 4, but then you're at 131, and 131 is not going to kill anybody.
Yeah, we'll be fine. The GM could go to the ownership group and say, all right, you wanted 130, we're at 130 and 800,000. We good? They'd be like,
Yeah, we're fine.
Yeah.
We're fine. So I don't think any heads are rolling if that's the case.
I think that's
Oakland
it for
now?
them. I think that's
Yep.
it for the Twins.
Okay, so again, what we did, we swapped Chris Paddock and Miguel Andujar. So Paddock is a Sacramento A, and we sent Christian Vasquez and $4 or $5 million cash to either Toronto or Boston, and that gets your number lower. Your backup catcher now is Jair Camargo, but I think that's okay because Camargo hits bombs and he's been in the organization for a while, and I think people like him.
And
Um,
Jeffers is a very solid starting catcher, so it's not like you need a good backup here. I'd
yeah,
rather try out a young guy.
you need a warm body, and I think Camargo can be that warm body that can handle it at the big league level. And the rotation, I'd argue, gets more exciting where you swap out Paddock and you insert the tandem of David Festa and Zebby Matthews, and you figure out which one is going to be part of the rotation.
1,000%.
Cool. Let's do the A's, and the A's are in an entirely different bucket. They have to spend a decent bit of money, actually.
do.
Shout out Goat Susie for DMing Aram and I, who were talking about the A's and why they were invested in some big ticket free agents. She mentioned guys like they might have a grievance filed against them, and I have the article here. Clay Snowden did a great write up on JustBaseball.com about all of this. The original reporting I think was done by Ken Rosenthal and Evan Drellich of the Athletic, and the gist is I want to read this excerpt. The risk of a grievance is due to the fact that the A's will collect 100% of their revenue sharing dollars in 2025 for the first time under the current CBA. While the team received just 25% of their allotment in 22, that figure increased to 50% in 23, 75% in 24, and finally reaching 100% of their revenue sharing dollars in 2025. Issue for the A's stems from the fact that the CBA requires revenue sharing recipients to spend more than 150% of their revenue sharing money on MLB payroll. That means, in order to avoid having a grievance filed against them by the MLBPA, their payroll needs to sit at about $105 million. What do you think it's estimated at right now?
65.
Close, 57. I see some estimates that are in the low 60s, but SpotTrack has the estimate at 57. I saw Fangraphs has the estimation at like 63. But here's what they've done to this point. On waivers, they've lost Ryan Noda, Royer Salinas, and Tristan Gray. They added Anthony Maldonado, reliever from the Marlins. They added Justin Sterner from the Rays, and they took Noah Murdoch in the Rule 5 draft. Noah Murdoch, the former Royal.
Someone should, just before you move on, someone should pick up Ryan Noda immediately.
They did. I think he's an Angel now. So
Good.
Ryan
Good move,
Noda and
Angels.
Nico.
Hey, people were making fun of us because they said we were too negative on the Angels. Good move. I like that move.
They looked at Nico Cavadas and said, "We need somebody else," and they grabbed Ryan Noda.
I love it. I think it's a good
That's
move.
what happened there. But free agency wise, they signed Luis Severino, obviously highest paid player in franchise history, 3 years, $67 million. They also signed TJ McFarland, big one year, $1.8 million. Cardinals fans had some mean nicknames for TJ McFarland at the end of his Cardinals tenure. I'm not going to share those here. And then the trade market, they've been pretty busy there. They got Jeffrey Springs and Jacob Lopez from Tampa for Joe Boyle, Will Simpson, Jacob Waters, and a comp pick at the end of round one, which is going to be, I think, the 36th overall pick. They also got reliever Jared Johnson from Atlanta for Nick Allen, and they got cash from Baltimore for Daz Cameron. Last year, they were 26th in runs scored. They were 20th in team OPS. They were 26th in starting pitching ERA, and they were 13th in reliever ERA. Now, that 13th in reliever ERA accounted for 4 months of Lucas Erceg, who is now a Kansas City Royal. This offense got better after the All-Star break, and the improvement was marginal on paper. They went from 20th in team OPS overall to 18th in team OPS after the All-Star break, but it was a more enjoyable watch. Lawrence Butler got better. Soderstrom got back, and Soderstrom was good. Langoliers was Bangoliers. Rooker was flirting with 340 homers. There is a vision here, and I get it offensively. We just got to spend money. I operated on the $57 million, so we got to add about $50 million to this payroll. You excited?
Yeah, I know. And that's why when I was going through some of the guys that I kind of wanted the A's to sign, I was like, this is kind of like Christmas here. It's almost as if we got a gift card to like an expensive store and
Hmm.
we just have to use it or else it's going to run out.
Yeah.
So it's like we have to buy things that we might not normally buy, but can because we have a gift card.
Yeah.
That's why I thought that this exercise was going to be a bagger
Yeah.
because we get to spend for the A's and we get to spend a little outrageously. This is perfect.
I'm pretty excited. And I do think that they have to find one guy that's going to be worth about 20 million plus on the market as well. Did you have that guy in mind?
No, that's the problem.
Really, I sprayed the board a little bit and I found one guy that you could pay about 25 to 28 million dollars a year for.
Who?
Flaherty.
I wasn't thinking rotation. I was thinking bats. But yeah,
They
this
need
is
more
probably
pitching.
this is probably the guy where you should be the team to get Jack Flaherty. And you put him in that ballpark. I mean, it's really easy to pitch there.
Are you sure? In Sacramento at
How
Sutter
did I
Health
forget that?
Ballpark? That's
How
not
did
the Coliseum.
how did I forget that? I can't believe I forgot that. I was only thinking about the Rays in the minor league park, and of course now, yeah, the A's are going to be that same thing too. So that's a moot point. Never
Yeah.
mind. But still, I think that's the right fit here. My fit, just because I want to spend, could Ha-Seong Kim go here?
He could. How
Because
much is that going to cost? Like, yeah, how much
but
of that gift card is it eating into?
I mean, look at the market now. Could
Yeah.
he be worth 15, 18 million over 5 years?
Could.
Maybe.
Could.
And because I'm looking at their infield, there's a reason that Dombrowski called the A's about Alec Boehm because at third base, Darnell Arnaez, he's 23 years old. He put up a 50 WRC plus in limited action, doesn't even have great numbers in the minor leagues, and he's still super young. I just
Yeah.
think he needs more time in the minors, so I don't think he's your answer. And then you look at shortstop and second base because that's primarily the positions that Ha-Seong Kim would play. And you have Jacob Wilson, rookie, and you have Zach Geloff, who was great in a limited sample, then was really, really bad in a much larger sample.
Yeah.
So you bring him in there. A guy like Ha-Seong Kim, he's not playing much third base, if at all, in his career, but he's such an elite defender that I'm sure he could just slide right over there and be perfectly fine. He'd probably be above average. Or he can give off some time if Wilson or Geloff aren't the players. I believe in Wilson. Geloff, I'm a little bit more nervous about.
Yeah.
So could he end up being the second baseman? Maybe you move Geloff in a trade. Maybe you try Geloff a third. I don't know what you would do there, but I thought that would be a good addition offensively because I do think that this team needs some infield help.
Yeah. So I think the answer would be Geloff to third base.
Probably.
Because they're nowhere close to giving up on Geloff
And
at
they
this
shouldn't
point. I
be.
don't think they shouldn't be. Wilson, I do think, is not the truth, but I think he's their shortstop of the future. And why would you block your shortstop of the future when he's fully ready?
Agreed.
I think Kim could play second base at a decently high price point. And Geloff has not logged a game at third base in his major league career yet. All 207 of his games have come at second base. But in the minor leagues, he played 60 games at third base. I think Geloff, if you give him 2 months to prep before spring training, could absolutely be your third baseman with Daryl Arnaez.
Yeah.
I I went dumpster diving,
Okay.
bat wise, because I spent big money on Flaherty.
Okay.
I looked at this and I said, I have an opportunity to hedge for you. And his name is Yoan Moncada. 1 year, $2
Ugh,
million. dollars.
no.
I know it's gross. I know it's gross.
Because I think pitching is still going to be relatively expensive. And you know how we've been trying to find a fit for Jose Quintana the entire time, but we keep trying to give him to teams who actually won't spend money? Now, doesn't bringing in a veteran like Quintana and Ha-Seong Kim fill that need more than Flaherty and like the worst hitter you could imagine?
Yeah, I think so. I like the Quintana and Kim idea. It was funny. Like, I'll just walk you through what I did to add it up to 105.5. Yoan Moncada, 1 year, $2 million. Cal Quantrill to 1 for 7, but I essentially swapped Cal out for Chris Paddock because you elevate by 5 there.
Yes. Yes.
So Paddock and that Andujar trade that we talked about with the Twins, again, it was the Twins can save $5 million and they can find their short side of the platoon option in a corner outfield with Andujar, and A's would get Paddock. So Moncada, Paddock for essentially $5 million. Jose Leclerc for 2 years, $10 million. Decent flip opportunity for the reliever. Jack Flaherty, 1+1, proved that you can do it again. and then like Hector Neris, and I landed on 105.5. But I like the idea of Kim and Quintana so much better. So let's ballpark a total number for 2025 that they're going to be at. And I'm going to use my Apple Pencil to add up.
Love it. So I'm thinking Ha-Seong Kim's going to be worth about 18.
Um, let's call it let, let's call it 16.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't
I
bother
do
me.
think $2 million is a big deal here. So
Okay, sure.
let's call it 16. I
Okay.
think 18 is very aggressive.
Okay.
So 16.
That's true.
57.
18 is blowing it out of the water. 16 is so much more perfect. I'm making
Thanks,
fun
man.
of you.
Yeah, I know you are. Quintana, I do think he could get 1 year for 12 or 13.
I had 13 written down.
Okay, so 57 plus 16 plus 13 to this point. 57 plus 16 plus 13 equals.
While you do the math, I had another idea to spend even more money because I think we're still 20 million under. Am I
We're at
correct?
86. We're $20 million under. Yep.
You know who's probably going to be 20 million who you compare with Mason Miller? Tanner Scott.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a gift card, Jack.
I know you do. This bullpen is really not good right now once you take
Exactly.
Jose out.
Like,
So,
what if we have Miller and Tanner Scott
yeah,
here?
but then what? So my thought is
Doesn't matter.
instead of signing one tier one, we sign
Yeah.
like three tier two.
I just don't love the tier 2 options.
I understand. I understand. So Miller, Ferguson, Otanez, McFarland, Grant Holman, who I really like, Murdoch, who's a Rule 5 guy, he's going to be there. Basso, Will Klein, Maldonado. That's a fun little hodgepodge there. You know whose price point's going to be a little higher than it probably should be because he wants to get some starting pitching opportunities,
Jeff Hoffman.
right?
Yeah. Why not give him a shot at this? All right, you want to be a starter? Okay. But we already brought in another starter, though. So now, I mean, we're pushing all these young A's out.
Yeah, because I don't want to be mean. I don't want to be mean.
Yeah, because well, they're good
Well,
guys.
like JP Sears threw 180 innings. Now, granted, it was at a very high fours.
Below
Joey
five.
Estes has flashed, but he
Almost
had a
below
5
five.
ERA.
Almost
Like,
below 5.05.
here's my thing, man. Like it's Sevy and Springs,
Yeah.
and then it's Sears, Estes, Spence, JT Ginn, Beto, and then Mason Barnett and Jack Perkins. So I like the short terms to get to Barnett and Perkins, but I don't think that they're breaking camp with the A's.
And we already signed Quintana, too, in this hypothetical
We
world.
signed Quintana. So as it stands right now, it's Sevy, Springs, Quintana, Paddock, and then
whoever wins. Probably
Sears.
Sears for sure.
But like, could you add a Hoffman to be the hybrid?
I think we're adding too much pitching. I think we got to go bats here. It's just there's so many options. I mean, you already mentioned 7 before we even added Paddock and Quintana.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think it's going to be Hoffman. And that's why I was going through the relievers and I was like, do I spend 7 million on some of these guys? Like I could understand Andrew Chafin. There's just among these tier 2 relievers, nobody really sticks out. So I was like, fuck it, let's get Scott. And then maybe some $1 million guys. Because I'd rather do that almost.
So my thing is I would rather spend 2 for 10 on Leclerc and then 2 for 20 on Estevez. Like I'd rather do that.
But I'd rather do Scott and then give Dylan Tate $2 million and see if he could be worth 7 million.
Now, you're forgetting that Tanner Scott has leverage here because he's a free agent.
Yes.
And we talked about Walker essentially not wanting to.
But we have a gift card.
I know we have a gift card, but like, it's not a good. It's a person.
Well, think about who are the teams that are going to spend a lot of money on a closer. Not a lot come up. And I know they already have one. We talked about the Royals potentially being interested in that. Who knows if they actually do it.
Yeah.
I love the fit there, but who eventually will sign Tanner Scott? And if you're Tanner Scott and some team is willing to offer you that extra year at the extra 20 million, like let's see what we can do here. Right? You want to cash in especially if I'm a reliever, I want to just get the most money. I mean, unless Tanner Scott is this competitor who's like, I'm willing to take less money to be the closer for a competitor, but which competitor then comes in and says, we're even willing to give you a 3, 4 year deal at all?
I think
Maybe
we're
they
getting
will.
closer to the Dodgers doing it for him.
Want to defer some of it? Damn
But
it.
if they don't, but if they
Yeah.
don't, like he could go bag hunting, and I get it. Is there a middle ground that we can settle on? Because like I'm being kind of stubborn with Tanner Scott right now.
No, I get that. And also, if you are the A's, you're not going to pay him to be the closer. You're paying him to be the eighth inning guy because you have Mason Miller. But
Yeah.
arguably, I think Tanner Scott's just as good. I think Tanner Scott
Right.
is.
So I understand the idea of co-closers, but you have 5 more years of
Yeah.
one of the best closers in baseball if you don't trade him. So I'm looking at tier two because I'm like, okay, who's going to be the next Urseg? Who's going to be the setup guy? And my eyes gravitated towards Kenley Jansen at the end, or Chris Martin, or Leclerc.
I think Kenley still wants to close. Um, maybe.
How about Canely?
Yeah, I would like to add Canely. Add
Okay,
some of the like. If you add Canely and you add Chafin, because those are upper level tier two guys. So if you had Canely, Chafin, give Seawald another shot.
let's start with Canely and Chafin.
Okay.
How much is Canely going to get? He was sub three last year in a lot of
Yeah.
innings. He going to get 7?
But then he turned into all changeups.
Yeah, he going to get 7.
6. I was thinking, sure, we can give him 7. We have a gift
Uh,
card.
let's give him 6.5.
Fuck it.
Compromise. How much is Chafin getting? 6.5? If Canely's 6.5, shouldn't Chafin be?
I was thinking Chafin might be like 7 or 8. Chafin's
Let's give him
good.
let's give him 7.
Okay.
Okay. So
Maybe I'm wrong
80,
there. I think Chafin's good. Can we put Dylan Tate on
86,
this team? I think Dylan Tate is a guy. Dylan Tate's a guy I want.
86 plus 13.5 is 99.5. Let's sign Dylan Tate as well.
Cool.
How much is Dylan Tate getting? 2?
2.
I'm writing all these names down. Okay, plus 2 equals 101.5. You need to spend $4 more million.
This is so cool. We have to spend more money.
I
Who
love this.
Yeah, what other bats do they need? So we already signed Ha-Seong Kim, so that takes that out. I wouldn't mind because we also just lost Andujar in that trade, and now
Yeah.
we have frickin' Seth Brown taking up left doing absolutely nothing,
Yeah, you have
respectfully.
Seth Brown. I would love to sign another outfielder now
Me
with
too.
Andujar gone.
What if doesn't this feel like the team to do it with Profar?
I think San Diego is going to do it with Profar. I think they're letting him
Okay.
collect every offer.
Okay. How
I
about
do like the idea of a
can we give
corner outfielder that
can we
could
give
maybe
Tommy
play first base.
Oh, I was gonna say, can we give Tommy Pham the major league deal he deserves?
Totally could. Totally could.
You could also give Austin Hayes a try. I know it
Yeah,
didn't work in Philly, but he's not that far removed from being an all-star.
no doubt.
Let's give Hayes a shot.
Okay. Hayes for 4 or 5?
Probably more. Probably like 8,
6?
right? I was thinking no, close to 10.
No way.
He's not that far removed from an all-star. It didn't work with Philly, but he's still a guy at 29 years old that I think people would want.
Yeah,
I know he's coming off a bad year. I
what
know.
was his estimate when he was non-tendered?
That's what you get here at the Just Baseball Show. We're looking up what was his estimate when Austin Hayes was non-tendered. Isn't this a banger?
He
This
was
is fun though.
projected for 6.4 and he was non-tendered.
Okay, then I'm overvaluing him.
But we only need to spend 3.5 more to get to 105
All right, Austin Hayes is an Oakland A for 5 mil.
for 5 mil. Okay.
Maybe we didn't give that extra 2 mil to Tate, and we're right where we should be.
No, I want to give it to Tate. I want to
Okay,
go over. I
me
want to
too.
go over.
As a sign of a good gesture from the great man that is John Fisher, a piece of shit.
We're going over by $1.5 million.
Damn right we
So
are.
here's the team that we just put together.
It's pretty good. It's
We,
pretty good.
we just signed No more. We traded. Yeah, we traded and took on $5 million. Oh, I didn't even account for the $5 million that we added with Paddock. We're way too far over.
We're way too far.
Fuck Dylan Tate,
Yeah,
man.
Dylan Tate, sorry, bro. Or we just
See ya.
don't sign Canely or Chafin.
No, I don't want Dylan Tate. I want Canely and Chafin.
But Dylan Tate could become Canely.
Okay. No, no Dylan Tate.
All
All
right.
right. Five with Paddock.
I think you just threw away one of the best relievers in baseball next year, just so you know that.
That's fine. That's okay.
Okay. That's
Uh,
fine.
so we're at 109.5 now. Look at John Fisher being so generous. Okay, so we just signed Hassan Kim, Jose Quintana, Tommy Canely, Andrew Chafin. We traded for Chris Paddock and we signed Austin Hayes. That got us to $109.5 million. They have to spend 105 to not have a grievance filed against them by the MLBPA. This is riveting shit. So let's run through the lineup here, and then we'll run through the rotation, and then we'll run through the bullpen. The lineup now, your catching options are Shea Langoliers and Kyle McCann. I'm very okay with that. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
McCann's a decent backup. I think
Yeah.
Langoliers is an awesome catcher.
We good?
First base, Soderstrom, and then somebody else that you can find either internally or externally.
I'm giving
Well,
Soderstrom all the run that he wants, and he deserves
course.
it. He's my first baseman, and we'll figure out a backup plan.
Of course. Middle infield, Jacob Wilson at short,
Mhm.
Zach Geloff at third with Daryl Ornelas and maybe Jordan Diaz, Ha-Sung Kim at second base.
Yep.
And the third middle infielder right now is Max Schumann. I think Max Muncy is going to be ready at some point this year. The other Max Muncy, not the Dodger, the prospect with the A's that is, I think, very underrated. He was a first round pick. He didn't get off to a great start, but he slowly but surely built his prospect capital back up. So that's the infield situation right now. The outfield, Seth Brown, J.J. Bleday, Lawrence Butler, Esteury Ruiz, Austin Hayes, and then you have Denzel Clark and Colby Thomas in Vegas knocking on the door. Denzel Clark was just added to the 40-man.
Austin Hayes and Seth Brown and left creates a platoon. I'm not going to say a good platoon, but it
No,
definitely
it
creates one.
creates a platoon, no
It
doubt.
creates one.
And C.J. Alexander could check in for Seth Brown if they decide to move Brown at some point. And C.J. Alexander is like, he was raking in Omaha last year. Decent AAA pickup there for them.
Cool.
Rooker is the DH, phenomenal.
I hope they extend
Start-
him too.
Yeah, we'll see. That's also an easy way to escalate payroll.
Definitely.
We could hand Rooker an extension. Hell, we could hand Langoliers an extension.
Yeah.
So
No, but no. I don't want to do that for this exercise because that
Yeah.
means then they didn't spend on free agents and our gift card goes away. And I don't want the gift card to go
fair.
away.
We
Yeah.
can't have the gift card go away. So the starting rotation now: Luis Severino, Jeffrey Springs, Jose Quintana, Chris Paddock, J.P. Sears, and then the depth is Joey Estes, Mitch Spence, J.T. Ginn, Osvaldo Bido. And these guys will come off. Mason Barnett, Jack Perkins will be ready at some
Yeah.
point. The bullpen now: Mason Miller, Tommy Canely, Andrew Chafin, Tyler Ferguson, Michelle Otanes, TJ McFarland, Grant Holman, Noah Murdoch, Will Klein, Anthony Maldonado.
That's a team here, folks.
It's a better team, and we spent some cash.
So hopefully everybody enjoyed this very long episode. We got a Walker Buehler interview. We talked about Cody Bellinger. We played general manager for the Minnesota Twins and the Oakland Athletics. If you enjoyed, again, the best way to support, hit the like button, subscribe on YouTube, and fill the comments up with all the takes that you didn't agree with that we gave you, or any takes that you have that we might have missed. Fill up the comment section below. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the best way to support this show without spending a singular dime, rate and review. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen, with a written review if you would be so kind. 5 stars. Pretty please. And again, if you are interested in some Just Baseball merch, I'm all merched out today. Just Baseball long sleeve, looking sick in it. Just Baseball rope hat, looking great in it. And we have a ton of new updated clothes on the merch store, new colors. It all looks great. Go check it out. And if not, make sure that you're leaving a review, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. For Jack McMullen, I am Peter Apple. Hopefully everybody has a great weekend. And with that, thank you, everybody.